together. Let's go through the presentation. Previously, my previous job was the CGO, Chief Growth Officer for the pre-Series B AI startup Job Hub In. So I have a few kind of experience, both successful and not so successful, in go-to-market, and based on my experience, I have composed some kind of sharing, which I hope would be useful for everyone today. I know that there is so many startups, and each of you have a very different market, different customer, and different product. So what I'm sharing here is centralized heavily on the tech platform, tech startup. So if you have any question after that you cannot find in this presentation, you can contact me directly. I would be happy to share a few more of my other understanding and some of the other advice that I can give. First, before we go into the go-to-market for pre and post-product market fit, we should first would be to understand about go-to-market. And I think this is a very easily misunderstanding definition, because we need first to identify the single most important goal during the go-to-market period. Many of the people think that go-to-market, that means be able to sell your product. So what, according to you, what is the single most important goal for the go-to-market period? Some people will say that, yeah, it's a sale number, it's the number of product order, it's the revenue, it's the number of user registration. But from my belief and my understanding, the single most important goal during the go-to-market period is to successfully establish the distribution channel into the target market. So it's just not sale, it's just not the number of registration, it's not the revenue. It is to be able to establish the distribution channel to the target market. So how to understand it? To establish the distribution channel, that means you can imagine go-to-market like you try to crossing the river, right? You try to cross from this side of the river to the other side of the river. So if you just what you need to do is that you need to build a bridge, right? So building the bridge is the same as establish the distribution channel. And for a startup, there is many different distribution channel depending on your product and your customer and your target market. There is the direct sale, B2C, B2B2C, the brick and mortar shop and store. Then there's the direct sale force. That means the good old sale people, they go out and they try to sell your product to the customer. There's the digital sale. That means the B2C, digital to consumer, digital to business, e-commerce site, marketplace, and mobile app. And then there's also the distributor. That means the reseller, affiliate, intermediary, who will help you selling the product to customer in that market. And there's also the ecosystem. You can use ecosystem as a distribution channel, like integrated product core proposal. So it's like when Apple and Nike, they collaborate together to promote the Apple Watch. So if you buy a Nike, you can have an app, dedicated app on the Apple Watch, which can tracking all of your engagement and give you many of the benefits, for example. So it's in an ecosystem. And ecosystem means that you need to have an integrated product together with the brand that you collaborate in order to roll it out in a certain market. And there's also the partnership. So like the purpose is for the market penetration. So the partnership is like if you use SAP or you use Salesforce, you know that they have an app market, right? So many of the startup, they collaborate with SAP and with Salesforce to develop an app on their on SAP and on Salesforce for the SAP and Salesforce customer so that they can use it. And then there's the community lab. So you know about Notion and a few other productivity app, right? So usually they will build a community. So they launching their app, they also build a community, and they use their community in order to spread it to more of the user in a certain market. And then also the product led. That means like Slack, they have a premium model. and they have a whole process where they try to onboarding the new member. So you ask when you create a Slack chat, one of the things they first ask is that you have any other team member you want to add on into your channel, thing like that. First the product left. So these are some of the popular distribution channel that you can use to go to the market. But it's the distribution channel is not just simply to establish a distribution channel. It's not simply a set up a sales force, not simply a set up a shop and store, not simply a set up an e-commerce website, or not simply signing a partnership or building a product. So in order to successfully establish a distribution channel, you have to do a few more things. And to do all of these things together, it's a go-to-market approach. So this is my personal framework, and so far it has been working well for me. And I would like to share with you about how, if it's with me, how I would develop my approach for go-to-market for a certain product. So you can see here, this is a technology product life cycle. So in the market for a technology product, usually we think it's as a single market, but actually it's divided into the early market and there's a mainstream market, right? So between the early market and the mainstream market, the early markets, that means that your product is welcome and your product is used by some of the more innovative customer base. The mainstream product, that's mean your product is spread to everyone using your product is the mainstream market. So, and it's become the market standard. It's something, it's like Canva, it's something like Canva that everyone using. So every company using Canva, ChatGPT, thing like that. It's a mainstream market. That means everyone know about it, everyone using it. It's the mainstream market, and it's the target of every company and every startup. But actually, when you go to the market, there's two times that you have to go to the market. The first time is that before you have a product market fit, you try to penetrate the early market, and that's in the go-to-market phase of the product market fit. And then when your product, even after it's had a product market fit, it's able to generate the revenue. It's able to have a certain base of customer with a consistent revenue stream every month. It needs to cross the chasm. So the chasm, that's the thing that you see between the early market and the mainstream market. This is where majority of the startup fail. A lot of startups fail even after they have the product market fit. They still fail. That means they fail to go into the mainstream market. They have a niche customer, but they never be able to spread to everyone. It's never become a standard, a market standard. It's never become a product that every company use. It's have a niche market, a certain base, a group of customers who using that product, but it's never be able to become something more that a lot more people would be using. Many of the startups will be struggle in the case of where majority of them would fail to go into the mainstream market. So that is the second time that you have to go to market again, even after you already have the product market fit. So the first time is when you try to penetrate the early market. The second time is that you try to penetrate the mainstream market. So the market is divided into the early and the mainstream. And in the early, we have the innovator customer. The innovator, they are willing to try anything. They don't care. Actually, they don't care a lot about effectiveness. They just want to try the new thing and see how it works. They want to understand. It's like a tech geek. So like a tech geek, tech blogger. They like the new product. They interact with anything new, with any new trend and anything that's coming up. They want to see how it's work, and they want to know if it's work or not. And then we have the visionary, the early adopter. So basically, we have the innovative leader, a CEO, someone in the tech company who is a visionary, and he's one to adopt a new product into his company in order to get a competitive advantage against all the competitor in the same market segmentation. So they are the early adopter. And so the total of the innovator and early adopter, the total of the early market, they are only around like 15 like 15 or 16% of the total market. The remaining 85% of the market is belong to the mainstream market. So in the mainstream market, we have the pragmatist, the leader, the corporation, the enterprise, the big customer, the big client. Majority of them are pragmatist and conservative. Pragmatist and conservative. Pragmatist is the one that they need to see that all the people, okay, people, they need to see that some successful case studies, some successful company who already implemented that technology and successful and using it, and then they will start to move to use the product. And then we have the conservative. The conservative is the people who are they do not like the new thing. They want to keep things stable and they want to keep things existing. And they only start using it when they see the pragmatists use it. So that's been they see everyone using it and then they start adopt. So they are the late majority. On people who only start to use something, to implement the technology after they see all the around them in the market already using it. They are the conservative. And finally, we have the skeptic, the lugger, who is in the end, he will not even using your product. They are just stay out with it and they dislike any new technology and they don't have any intention to use the new technology in their business. So these are the skeptics. So, but penetrate the mainstream market is a necessary if you want to grow your product into the status of a unicorn. You want your product to spread to everyone. You want to generate a very high revenue. You need to go to the mainstream market, or you will stuck into the early market and just niche product for some group of customers, but never become mainstream. So these are the technology product life cycle usually for tech product. And so what I am, so the framework that I usually do before when we go to a market for a product is that we need to care about a few things. So before we even go to the target of the go to market is to establish the distribution channel, right? But distribution channel is actually the last thing that you need to care about. You need to have the product, you need to have a segmentation, you need to have a positioning, and before even you go to the distribution channel, you need to have the all of these three things. So the distribution channel, in order to successfully establish the distribution channel, you need to have the three things first. You need to have a clear product strategy. You need to have a clear customer segmentation. You need to have a clear positioning for your product. And finally, after you have all of the three, you can planning your distribution channel. So we will quickly go through all of these each of these things. So the first thing is about the product. So when we talk about product, here is a complete product stack, complete product strategy. So when you're planning your technology product, you need to first a product. When you think about a product, you just think it's a product like a phone or like a software, like a platform, tech platform that you have. When you think about product, you just think that that's a single product, but actually product have multiple layers. The first is the generic product. Generic product is what has been shipped in the box and covered by the contract and the promise. That means when you sell an iPhone, so this phone have the 3 camera, this phone have the resolution, this phone is everything that you promised in the box and put into the selling contract needs to be honored in the generic product. So if you say it's something, this is a camera with 64 megabytes, that means that camera needs to have exactly that spec when you sell the product to the customer. So it's a generic product. It's something that you commit and promise to the customer, and it needs to be exactly the same. And then we have the expected product. So when the customer, they buy a phone, what they expect is actually the experience, how they feel and how they expect the product to perform, to work, and how they expect it to be. So when we buy a CRM, we expect that the CRM would help our sales people to sell, to manage that contract, to sell better, to increase the revenue. For example, these are the expected of the product. And then we have the augmented product. So among so many phone, among so many CRM and SaaS platform and product, why do I need to choose your product? So your product have a good customer service. You have a reputation on the market. Our competitor is using your product. So these are, and we all your products have an ecosystem. You have the marketplace app. You have the collaboration. You have a partnership with these certain brand, which would bring me more benefit if I use your product. So these are the augmented product, like an ecosystem that help and support and increase, maximize the chance that the customer would buy your product. It's the add-on, but it's very important. It help your product expand and bring more value to your product, not just the expectation. It's our own. It's like the over deliver, not just what the customer expect, but also to bring them more value. So that's the augmented product. And then finally is the potential product. So a product, a tech product, the thing with a tech product is that it can continually evolve, it can continually develop new feature, new function can be added into the product and create more value to the product. So basically a tech product, a tech platform, they have the potential to improve and to grow even more out of their initial spec and their initial product. They become something entirely different even later. So we're gonna have a few examples. So here you see is an iPhone. So if the first example is a tangible tech product. So this is something that you can hold, you can touch, and you can see it. So for a tech product, so the generic product is an iPhone. For example, Apple iPhone 12 Pro Max. So it have to be using Apple Bionic chip. It have 512GB storage. It have 6GB of RAM. It have the Retina. It have a camera 12 megabyte with 4K record and things like that. So it have a spec. That means when you buy an iPhone, expect to see the spec. And when you buy an iPhone, expect to see this spec. So it's something that Apple they have to honor when they sell you the product. But when you buy an iPhone, when you buy and expect the product, what you expect from an iPhone? Many of you here using the iPhone, you expect it to be fast, it's expected to smooth, intuitive. It needs to have an amazing camera, it have a good color, and the battery of the iPhone is very long. It can last all day, and they can charge very fast, something like that. So that's the expectation you have for the iPhone. But the augmented product is that when you buy an iPhone, you expect to have the Apple Care service, you expect to have iCloud, you expect to have Apple Pay, you expect to have iTunes to synchronize between Mac, iPad, and your iPod. So the thing is that if iPhone do not have iCloud, if iPhone do not have Apple Care, if iPhone do not have Apple Pay, or they do not have iTunes, would you have buy an iPhone? No, maybe you buy an Android phone, you buy a Samsung, you're not buying an iPhone. So even though the augmented product is something that deliver as a add-on and benefit, but it is something that affect your buying choice of the product. So that's the augmented product and potential product. So the iPhone is at the App Store, right? So with the app, when you install any app into your phone, it turns your phone into something new. So in the modern day, a phone can replace your TV, a radio, GPRS, a camera, a video player, a cassette, a barcode scanner, even replace a map. The phone would even replace your ID, your credit card, your password, your key, and even becoming your personal assistant, right? So the phone, the potential, it's just a phone. At first, it's a smartphone. It's a phone, something that you use to communicate with people, to call people. But now it's become something even more. It's application. The product as a phone is unlimited. The potential of a phone is unlimited. That's the reason why Apple is the most valuable company in the world right now, because they create a product that have unlimited potential. It can grow and it can become anything with the app that you install on the phone. So that's why the potential product is something that will keep raising and raising and raising the selling, and making more revenue coming in, and make the product become a mainstream, something that everyone using. So that's the an example of a tangible tech product. So we come into next is we an example of a software product, something that not intangible, something that you sit only on your phone. So if a software tech, so the what is example here is Grab. So what is Grab? Grab is an app that you can use on Android and iOS. With the Grab, you can use for transportation, you can use for delivery, you can pay the bill, you can use some other service. For example, like when I think it's right now, it's not happening in Vietnam, but if you are in Indonesia, for example, you can even order someone come to your home to fix your electricity. You can call someone to do massage for you directly on the phone. They have the service. You can ask for the people to come and provide you with the service, something like that. But these are the so these are the generic product that Grab provided in that certain market. And the expected product, when we use a product like Grab, what we expect? We expect the safety and the timely transportation. We expect the delivery has to be on time. We expect that the paying needs to be convenient and fast. We feel that we are in control. We expect maybe cheaper, right? It should be cheaper than taxi outside, right? So these are, and it's more convenient because we can track, we know where the driver is, something like that. So these are the expected product, the user experience of the product. And then the augmented product. So Grab, they provide you with the hotline, emergency phone. They provide you with the online call. You can call the driver without the cost. There's a gamification, there's a reward. The more you use the app, you can also be exchange. I think before Grab has a Grab reward, you can exchange many of the voucher for the voucher. There's a subscription model for the frequent user. So these are the augmented product that maybe, yeah, it's better because I use Grab because, yeah, they have gamification, they have the credit, they have a subscription model. It makes the app cheaper than competitor, for example, thing like that. And then we have the potential product. So Grab, Gojek, and many of the other apps, they have been always want to be something like a super app. So in the future, they're gonna have the live streaming, they're gonna have the marketplace, they're gonna have the everything, loyalty and the e-voucher platform, everything into one app. They can increase more of the financial service to provide the one-stop shop for all the user need and demand. So the potential of something like Grab is that it can become a super app, one app for everything that a user need on a daily basis. So these are the potential of a product. So basically, this product stuff you can be applied into anything, not just a tech product, software or tech product. It can even be applied into something like a bánh mì, right? So for bánh mì, là bánh mì Quỳnh Hoa, something is very popular in Saigon. So even the bánh mì, they have the generic product, they have the expected product, they have the augmented product. The only thing that bánh mì don't have is that the potential. So a bánh mì is a bánh mì. It cannot become something else, right? Bánh mì is just bánh mì. It cannot become phở, or it cannot become another. There can be no improvement for a non-tech product. So that's why they don't have the potential, and that's why they don't scale and they don't grow, and they cannot become a unicorn. But with this product, you can apply to almost any product that you build. So this is, I think, it's a very good framework that help you to develop your product strategy. When you build your product, you need to think, okay, what is the generic product that I deliver to the customer? What is the expected product they're gonna expect from our product? What is the augmented product, the ecosystem to maximize the chain that they buy us instead of the of the competitor, and the potential in the future. If our product grow, what else it can become in the next 5 year, 10 year? How would it be in the future for our product? So that is something that you can. That is something that you need to think about when you develop and you build your product, right? So that is first is about the product. Next, we go into the segmentation of your product. So you need to know your customer. Segmentation is just simply to know who is your customer, who are they, what they are doing. So the simple framework is that you identify them based on the demographic, what is their job, what their age and gender, what their income, something like that. And then you identify them maybe based on the geographic, where they are. Is your product something that deliver only in this city or nationwide or international? And who is the user, the people who buy your product, for example, where customer. Then we also based on the behavioral. I mean, the users, when they use it, how often they use it, what is the, do they need a certain kind of knowledge, understanding to use our product, and product opinion, how they gonna use our product, things like that. And finally, but the most important is the psychographic, the belief, the value, the interest. Why would they buy the product from us? Because this is the single up in the 4 category: the demographic, the geographic, the behavioral, and then the psychographic is the thing that is most important. Because and so to in order to identify them and to attract them, the product feature and function, the product pricing, the industry specific, the product service range, the product regional focus, product feature and function is something that will use to be identify these people. Product UI and UX, retention and loyal activity, customer service and support, things like that. But for the psychographic, you need to have the pain point. You need to know the uncertainty. You need to know their fear. What is the thing that causes them the most pains? And the bigger the pain, the more they're gonna buy from you, buy your product. So based on the segmentation, you can draw a clear picture of your customer and who you want to target when you go into that market. So it's very important to understand these points. And based on the segmentation, you go based on the product, and based on the segmentation, you go into the positioning. So you know what your product has to offer. You know what is your product right now, what you have right now, what they expect from you, and you know your customer. You know who they are, where they are, how they're gonna use our product, and you know what they think, what is their pain point, their problem. Then you go into the next phase. You develop your positioning before you go to market, before you launch your product, before you build the distribution channel. You need to positioning your product very clearly. How and how. So this is a frame. This is a framework for brand positioning, product positioning, and brand positioning, to identify the pain point, to identify the unique selling point, and also the alternative. So what we have right here is that you see a graph here. So we have a product. What you see right here is that based on the unique selling point, our product should be the top of choice, the top of the choice for the customer when they consider buying our product. So usually you need to identify the pain point 1, the pain point 2, at least 1 or 2 pain points that the customer is facing right now. And these pain points are actually very true for the customer that we are targeting. So these people, they need to have that exactly pain point that we are targeting here. And then based on the pain point, we're gonna have the unique selling point, the value proposition. How our product gonna solve the pain point for our customer. USB 1 and USB 2, right? And then you also need to have something like a market alternative and product alternative. So market alternative is that mean you can think it's simply as a market alternative. That's a current solution. It's being used by our customer on the market. But because they are using that product, they are having the pain point, they are having problem. And then you have the product alternative. That means that they are not our competitor. They are using the same technology. They are using the same thing. They are doing the same thing that we are doing, but they are not in the same market. They are not our competitor, but they are using the same solution. They are deliver the same solution. They are, but they are not in the same market. So these are the product alternative. So in order to make this more easier to understand, we're gonna have a example. So this is actually based on one of the brand, a hybrid education brand that I used to work for. I work for this brand from 2014 2016. It's called Wordtrick English, and this is an English teaching center. It's only have 4 center. By the time that I 2016, they have 4 center, and they have a monthly recurring revenue. They have a monthly recurring revenue of $125,000 per month, and they have an annual revenue of $1.5 million per month, per year, with just 4 English center. And I think that is the very impressive. And they only the brand, they only launch for less than 3 years. After 3 years, they reach an annual recurring revenue of 1.5 million, and I think that's a lot of revenue for just 4 English center. So what we see right here is that because they have a very, when you talk about the English, when you talk about English, there is when you talk about English, there is only talk about English, there is a few group of customer. They're the student, they're the kid, and they're the adult. So the adult is the grow up is actually not a lot. The kid and the student is actually have a lot more. It's a bigger market. But when Wordtrick English, when they go to market, they identify, they only targeting the adults, only the grow up. So the grow up, they have a very clear pain point. Is that because they are grow up, they are working, they have 9 to 5 job, they're working in company, they're working in corporation, so they have fixed time. That means they don't have a lot of time. They cannot study during the day, and they only get off work after 6 or 7. So they have a fixed time. They have fixed time. They don't have a lot of time to study. Actually, that's the first pain point. The second pain point is that they have the limited learning capacity. That means usually when you learn English in a center, you will be restricted. For example, like you pay this amount, you learn this amount of unit, and there's a limit on how much you can learn. And there are people who learning very fast, and there are people who learning slower, but everyone is the same class, and so there's a limit. So every day you learn 1 unit, every day you learn 1 unit, and you cannot go faster, even if you learn faster than the other people. So there is limited learning capacity. That means you cannot learn faster, you cannot learn more, even if you want. So these are the two, and especially if you have fixed time, you want to learn faster. You want, maybe in the weekend, I want to learn 3, 5, even 10 units during the weekend. But during the normal day, weekday, I only learn like 1 unit or 2 units, things like that. So these are the pain points that an office worker having with us. So the unit selling point that Wordtrick English offering at that time, it was innovation. It was something that very new. Remember, it was in 2013. So it was something very new. That means there is a hybrid education brand. That means you learn, they have the center, but the lesson and everything that you learn is on an online learning platform. So basically, when you want to learn something, you can learn it on your laptop, you can learn it on an app, you can learn it on your laptop, and you only need to go to the center after you finish learning a few of the lessons, and then you go to the center to have a section with the English speaking teacher. So you only go to the center when you need to review or you need to do the test, you go to the center. So basically, it provides the learner with the flexibility in time. So flexibility, that means You can, when you all go to the website, there's a booking system, and you can see that there's how many slots in the day that you can go to the center and book a section with the teacher, and you go in and you book the time that's most suitable for you. There's slot. It's like the movie. There's slot, and you can book it. So it gives the learner the flexibility. So all the other English center, you either have to go on Monday or Wednesday or Friday, or you go in a specific time in Thursday or Thursday, things like that. But with this system, you can book and you can come to the center anytime you want, or anytime that you think is convenient for you according to the time slot. Yeah. So it gives the flexibility. And then there's unlimited learning. So if you learn fast, you can learn 10 lessons in one day. Then you can book the class and come to review and do the test, and you pass the test, and then you can learn another. You can learn how many you can. So there's no cap. So basically, within 6 months, if you learn fast, you can go like in 6 months, you can go like 100 lessons in 6 months. And you can go very fast. You faster than the other. You can learn and learn, and you can. There's no limit on how much you can learn. So you learn. You can maximize the amount of money. So you pay this the same amount of money. But if you learn more, you can go faster than the other. But if you learn slower, you can take your time and learning at your own pace. So there is a flexibility, and there's the unlimited learning. So when the people think about the flexibility and think about the unlimited learning, the brand is the top choice, or the obvious choice at that time. So when an office worker, they come to the center, they see that the pain point is resolved by these things. So that's why it is the obvious choice for them to buy. And that's why they have a high conversion rate. And that's why they have a very high revenue. Each of the section, I think the average revenue for each of the average cost for each of the English learning section for 6 months, I think was around $2,000. So the average bucket size was $2,000, right? And then we go to the market alternative. So market alternative is a class by English. So that means the traditional English center. They're earning offline and they have a class, right? So you go into this class at a fixed time and you're learning. So this is the traditional, and this is the most popular. At that time, it was the most popular class by English. Was the most popular. Right now, it's still popular, but using that market alternative, it brings the pain point to the customer, to the office worker. Office worker cannot learn that way. The kid, okay, they can learn that way because they do not have to go to school, so that's okay for them. The student is still okay. The student only study half a day, so they still have the time to learn when they want to. But for the office worker, the people who go into work already, it's not possible. So it's called a pain point. And there's also the product alternative. Product alternative like the online learning platform. There's already all the online learning platform, but it's not in the same market. It's not a direct competitor. At that time, it was not direct competitor. So that's why these are how you should understand about the market alternative and the product alternative. So when you build your product and you identify your customer, you need to positioning them. Okay, so they are so our product. This is the pain point, and this is our unit selling point and the value proposition that you can use in order to provide the customer to solve their problems and to make them to erase the pain. And that would be something that help you penetrate the market. So this is brand positioning. The brand positioning in the weapon is something that you need to sharpen. You need to make it very attractive, make it very strong. The stronger the pain point, the clearer the unit selling point, the value proposition, the more easier it's for you to penetrate the market. You will not have to convince the customer a lot. You just represent them with the product, with the solution, and they, oh wow, yeah, this is something that I need, and that's something that I want. So these are the positioning, how you develop your positioning for your product before you start the go to market. And finally, we go to the distribution channel, right? So we already go to the product, right? We have the 4 things: the product, the segmentation, the position. And then after we have 3 of them, we have the product strategy, we have the segmentation, we have the positioning. We will start thinking about blending for our distribution channel. So with the distribution channel, so we go back here again. We have 2 times. We have 2 times where we have to go to the market. Before we have the product market fit, and after we have the product market fit, right? And each time the pre-product market fit is that we try to penetrate the early market. And for the both product market fits, we need to penetrate the mainstream market. And so, but the expected, we already talk about the product stack, right? So in order to penetrate, so you can see here, in order to penetrate the early market, you need to at least have a generate product and the expected product. That means the product you build need to solve the problem for the customer and do what they expect the product to do. So these are the minimum requirement for you to win the early market. But the expected product will not be enough for you to cross the chasm, to penetrate the mainstream market. When you want to penetrate the mainstream market, you need to start develop the augmented product. You need to build the ecosystem. You need to have extra benefit that can compete against all the competitors in the market to convince the pragmatic customer to buy your product instead of the competitor. So you need to start compete against the top customer, compete against the other competitor. So that's why you need to have the augmented product and maybe the potential product in order to successfully to penetrate the mainstream market. So that is how you put the product stack in the product life cycles to see, yeah, this is the product strategy that we need to develop. So when we are in the early market, we try to penetrate the early market. We need to focus on the generic product and to focus on the expected product to deliver exactly what the customer wants to win them. But when we go into the mainstream market, we need to identify our product again. We need to start develop the augmented product, and we need to develop the potential product to expand it, to bring more value to the customer. And so when you go to the early market, you need to have the expected product. You need to identify the early segmentation of your customer. You need to identify we need to have an innovative positioning. But when we go to market the second time, we need to have an augmented product. We need to segment. We need to segmentation again. But this time, identify the customer profile in the mainstream market. And when we want to go to the mainstream market, we cannot just be innovative. We need to be professional. Many of the enterprise level, many of the big customer, the corporation, the big company, they don't care a lot about innovation. They actually care about the professional. They care about the ecosystem. They care about the successful case study you have with all the brands in the same segment that they have. So based on this, we can select the distribution channel that's suitable for you. Just to have an asterisk here. So the distribution channel here is just a demonstration. So the actual channel that you use will be different depending on you. So maybe direct sales force will be in the early market for you, depending on your product and depending on your customer. So it will depend. So this is just a demonstration, okay? So within the early market, maybe you use digital sales, you have distributor, you do the product led, you do the community led in order to penetrate the market. You have a lean team, you have an e-commerce website, you do not have a sales force, you don't do ecosystem, you don't have partnership, you don't have direct sales. You don't have direct sales yet, you don't have store and everything yet. You just focus on online channel, digital channel. and distribution affiliate to sell the product, and that's fine, that's okay for the early market. But when you go into the mainstream market, you start selling for the big corporation, for the enterprise. You need to have a direct sales force, professional sales people. You need to have an ecosystem and partnership with big brand in order to convince the customer that you are repeatable. You need to have a direct sale. You need to have a store. You need to have a big office building. You need to have the office building. You need to have something you display your physical product to convince the customer that you have a professional positioning to convince them to buy your product. So that's an example. So you have a different product strategy, you have a different segmentation, and you have a different positioning when you go to market for the first time before you have a product market fit. But then you need to optimize your product. You need to optimize your segmentation. You need to readjust your positioning again when you want to go from the early market into the mainstream market. Yeah. So these are the framework that I used to do for the go-to market before you have the product market fit and after you have the product market fit. So that is something like a guideline for me whenever I develop a go-to market approach for a brand or a product. I usually go with the framework here. As you can see, the product, the segmentation, the positioning, and then finally the distribution channel. And as we already talked about, the go-to-market is basically the successfully establishment of the distribution channel. But the distribution channel is actually the last thing that you do. You need to have a clear product strategy. You need to have a clear segmentation, and you need to have a very clear product positioning. And then you select the distribution channel that fit the most with the customer and the market that you are targeting right now. And then you start pushing for it. You establish the digital sale, the website, the marketplace, which marketplace you're gonna sell on, which website, how they're gonna buy it from our website, how they're gonna do the transaction, who is our distributor, who is our affiliate. Do we have a product-led strategy, product marketing team to do it? Do we build a community to attract the customer and to retain the customer? Things like that. So these are the steps that usually you need to do in order to achieve it. So yeah, that is on everything that I want to share with you guys about the go-to-market strategy. And I hope it's provide you with some of the clear approach and framework on how you can approach it, from having a clear product strategy and then segmentation to understand and to know more about your customer, and based on that develop your own brand positioning with clear pain point, with clear unit selling point in order to penetrate the market easier. And then finally select the distribution channel in order to go to market better. So yeah, these are the things that I would like to share with you.
Thank you so much for making the time. Thank you so much, anh Tú, for joining us. I hope that you all learned great lessons today, some best practice, some good advice. Wish you all a very successful and amazing year ahead. Thank you, everyone. See you next week.